Hey everybody, we're going to be looking at the New Answers number 4, okay? In the book New Answers number 4. And it's talking about the creationists and the law of nature, okay? And what we have to understand is that everything in nature is bound by laws. That's the scientific fact. Everything in nature is bound by laws, okay? And the Bible says that these laws are laws of nature in Jeremiah 33:25. The laws describe the way God normally accomplishes his will in the universe. And so basically, it's putting God's logic into the universe. And as we often do, we want to look at things briefly from both sides, right? The atheistic or the non-God view and the biblical or godly view. And the atheists are unable to account for the logical, orderly state of the universe. They just can't find a reason for it. However, the laws of nature are perfectly consistent with biblical creation. And we're going to talk about, the book talks about, and we're going to talk about some of these different laws that are of nature as they state them. And I want to be very clear about two things. First and foremost, I don't comprehend all of these in a great detail, okay? I'm not a scientist. I don't understand the details of these. I might have a basic knowledge of most of them. And so it's okay if you don't either. And I don't expect you to understand all of these completely. And hopefully it doesn't bore you to death. Some of you may understand these more so than I do. I have a daughter who's taking physics and is going to continue to take different levels of physics and will understand some of this, in greater detail than I do. And that's okay. The point is that there are laws of nature that are governed in the universe and are put there by God, okay? So let's talk about, first of all, the law of life or biogenesis, okay? Life always comes from life. Life comes from previous life. There's no exceptions found in the universe. This is one I get, right? You can't just have life just created out of nothing. We can't do that. We can't just produce something that's living. It has to come from something else that was living, from some type of previous life. Molecules to man, evolution violates the law of biogenesis, okay? So evolution basically violates this law. Then you have the law of chemistry. And life requires a specific chemistry, a balance, right? Every living being has information stored on a long molecule called DNA. And this law of chemistry gives different properties to the various elements and compounds. For example, again, my basic level knowledge, you have H2O, right? And if you put those together, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen together, you're going to come up with water. And our bodies are very similar. Everything in nature is made up of some type of compound of elements, right? Properties of elements and compounds are not arbitrary. They're done in a specific order. If you lose one little thing, it can change everything drastically, right? And this is all based on quantum physics now. We're up here. And atoms and molecules have the various properties because their electrons are bound by quantum physics, okay? Chemistry is based on physics. If physics even are slightly different, the atom is not even possible. Okay, not even possible if we have it just slightly different. Then we have the law of planetary motion. Okay, the law of planetary motion basically starts with Johannes Kepler. He was a creation scientist and discovered planets in our solar system obey 3 laws of nature. And these laws were that planets orbit in ellipses with the sun at one of the focus of the ellipses. The planets sweep out in equal areas in equal times. They basically speed up as they get closer to the sun. And then there's an exact mathematical relationship between a planet's distance from the sun. That one I'm okay with. Then there's the laws of physics. Okay, physics describes the behavior of the universe at its most fundamental level. They describe the way the universe operates. And there's multiple different laws of physics, okay? They describe how light propagates, how energy is transported, how gravity operates, how mass moves through space. And they're usually very mathematical in nature, right? If the more math you do, the more you might understand physics. And there's some hierarchy to some of these laws of physics. Some of the laws of physics are derived from other laws of physics, okay? So they have to kind of go in this order. And then there's some universal constants that apply in the laws of physics. Many physical constants of nature. In many cases, if the fundamental constants had a slightly different value, life would not be possible. And then there's what they call the anthropic principle. The laws of physics are fine-tuned in just the right way so that life, particularly human life, is possible. Ultimately, that's saying is all these laws of physics, if they were just slightly off, life here on Earth would be impossible. And everything has to be governed by these laws and run so smoothly, or else everything else would be messed up. Then we have the laws of mathematics. The mathematical laws and principles include the rules of addition, transitive property, commutative properties of addition and multiplication, binomial theorem, and many other things, okay? And I love math, and I understand quite a bit of this stuff, but there are laws that have to apply to math and are abstract, not attached to any part of the universe. So an example is transcendent truth, okay? But again, just another law. If you're not great on math, it's okay if you don't completely understand this. Because again, we're just talking about and want to grasp the basic concept that there are laws in nature, whether we understand them completely or not, and they have to be fine-tuned and run, and they are in the universe, or else our life here would not even be possible. Then you have the laws of logic, okay? All laws of nature depend on the laws of logic. One cannot imagine the laws of logic can be anything different from what they are. Then there's the law of contradiction, because you cannot both have A and not have A at the same time. Without the laws of logic, reasoning would be impossible. Atheists can't account for the laws of logic, even though they must accept it exists in order to do any rational thinking. So basically the atheists go, we don't know how this happens, especially if they want to try to push and believe that life came from non-life, basically, right? Which goes against the law of biogenesis that we talked about in the first law. But they have to agree and say that the law of logic is there, or else they can't do any rational thinking themselves. And so there's a contradiction there. However, if we look at it from the biblical perspective and say that man is made in the image of God, then logic reasoning is easy to define, because God is, just brilliant, obviously, and if we're made in his image, then we would have the ability to do that. The last law is the law of uniformity of nature, okay? The laws of nature are uniform. They do not change arbitrarily. They apply throughout the whole cosmos and apply in the future as they did in the past. Okay? So that's just, like I said, goes to show you that even if you don't understand these laws, they're still in place. If you don't completely understand how to drive a car and how the engine works in that vehicle and the brakes and everything, it doesn't mean that you can't drive the car. But it also means if some of those little things are messed up, you might have problems with your vehicle. And that's the same thing with the laws of nature. If we don't have to completely understand them, we should have a basic concept of what they are, and that's why we went over them. But we have to understand that they're there. Atheists and non-biblical people can't really understand how they operate, but we can if we just sit down and say, A, they come from God. God put them in place, and they run as he designed. Our book concludes with this, and so will I. We have seen that the laws of nature depend on other laws of nature, which ultimately depend on God's will. Thus, God created the laws of physics in just the right way so that the laws of chemistry would be correct, so that life can exist. It is doubtful that any human would have been able to solve such a complex puzzle. Yet, God has done so. The atheist cannot account for these laws of nature, even though he agrees that they must exist, for such laws are inconsistent with naturalism. Yet they are perfectly consistent with the Bible. We expect the universe to be organized in a logical, orderly fashion and to obey uniform laws because the universe was created by the power of God. Thanks.